What's up, guys? This is Doctor, and welcome to another episode of the FPL Fantasy. Today, we have the 10 commandments for you to go to FPL heaven to achieve this high rank that you want to achieve at the end of the season. We have 10 advices that if you follow, we hope that we follow, and we hope that this gets you into the higher ranks. And of course, by we, I'm referring to my co host, Joe. Joe, how are you today?
I'm doing good. I'm ready to jump in and talk about 10 things to do to get us and everyone else up those ranks a little higher.
And I should mention that Joe and I think we have a combined experience of 20 years. That's mental. I feel old because of that. How do you feel about that, Joe?
It's whatever. Most of those years are yours, so you're the old guy.
All right, let's get into this. So, number one, you should limit your emotional hits, especially and transfers, because transfers that are done basically for a one game week because you are scared or you have FOMO to get that player in, especially for a hit for just 1 week, they tend not to work. They work sometimes, and we usually remember the ones that they work, and we tend to forget the ones that they don't. So a -4 could mean thousands of positions before even the game week starts of a drop. So when you make a transfer, avoid the emotions and try to make it as rational as possible.
I completely agree, and this is something that I do multiple times this season. I'm pissed off at a player, and I'm like, screw it, you're out, you suck, you're gone. And maybe it was the right choice, maybe it wasn't the right choice, but regardless, it was a very emotional thing where I was just frustrated at the performance and couldn't handle it anymore. And if we're being honest, my first wild card is usually an emotional thing. As I know Doc saw last year, I was like, yeah, I'm waiting till 8 till the fixtures turn. This is going to be sick. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, game week 3, everything's trash. Pop in the wild card, get me a brand new team. I don't care about these losers. So it helps to have some sort of restraint and to balance out the emotional and analytical side of things. And I would even say expand this further just beyond hits and transfers, but also keepers. Sometimes we have our favorite player in our team or a player from our favorite team, and they're just not performing well. And they're like, I'm just going to keep them. It has to turn. They have to turn around and do better. I'm just going to hold on to them. And they don't end up working out for us. So I think it can go both ways for sure. But yeah, watch out those emotions. Keep them in check. They're not always going to steer you down the right path for sure.
Yeah. And moving on to the next one,
All right.
take risks at the end of the season. This implies that you shouldn't go too different. You can go different, of course, but you shouldn't go too different at the beginning of the season. And if you're at a striking distance, let's say the last 8 of the season, the last 8 game weeks, you can take risks. You can remove that Salah and bring three Diaz, Nunez. This is the opportunity to take risks. I'm not saying start template, but start relatively safer. Stay with the pack before trying to get away from them.
Yeah, and I think anybody that watched our videos from last season can definitely, I can attest to this for sure because I took out Salah with like 6 or 7 game weeks left in the season. And I think you even thought that I was like crazy or drunk or something, but I was like, nah, I don't know. I can use those funds elsewhere, and Salah isn't Salah of game week 1 through 30 anymore. So I made that move. I chose to take out Salah. It ended up, I think, stabilizing me in a lot more of my riskier plays that didn't pan out. Like looking back at game week 36, I went for it and I went completely different than what the template was and what everybody else was, and it felt like it was going to work out, but just didn't. But we'll talk more about game week 36 from last year in an upcoming point. And one more thing to attest to this, Jamie, who actually won FPL, he talks about how he was in the hundreds of thousands, like I think 10 weeks before the end of the game of the season, and he ends up going on to win FPL because he took some calculated risks that could have hurt him or could have paid off and could have helped him move up the ranks, and he felt like it was more beneficial to take those risks than not to. And I think it probably worked out. He won, so that counts for something.
Absolutely. And moving on to the next point is data is king. I like to say fixtures are king or is king, but we refer to this point as data is king. The reason we say data is king because following stats help you kind of take the emotions out of the game and also support the eye test. A lot of people kind of don't like using data because they trust their eyes and everything. Nobody's saying just use purely data, but they can complement the eye test if you would like, because sometimes you have a narrative in your mind and the data can either break this narrative or support this narrative.
Yeah, I think you definitely want to use it to your advantage, but also in combination with the eye test. I mean, there's situations where it doesn't work out, where if we think about last year, our good old buddy Embo, he ended up hitting the woodwork like something like 12 or 15 times, and everybody's like, he has to move the ball like just 6 centimeters to the left, and he's gonna score. It's not that hard. He's hit the woodwork 3 times as much more than the next player. He's got to make it work. And so there's some situations like that where it just really didn't work out until they brought in a couple transfers in the January window. But I think 9 times out of 10 you are going to be looking like at defenders that have crosses or touches in the final third or have created big chances, situations like that where they're getting themselves in those attacking positions to get you those extra points. And I'm a big proponent of the eye test, but it's not everything. A player can look so good and it just doesn't work out. Thinking back last year again, Tony at the beginning of the season, he seemed like he was going to be a monster, but he always assisted the assister. And unfortunately in FPL they don't give us points for that.
I should add to that that for me it's extremely important. I would say that I'm more of a data person, although I watch probably 5 matches and I watch the rest of the highlights as well. 5 matches a week, but I follow the data, and I must say that context is extremely important because I can play with data to represent my narrative, and we see it a lot even in daily life. So it's important to take context into consideration. For example, when you're looking at XG, when I look at XG, I take into consideration the Sun is an elite finisher and he always outperforms his XG. So it's not, you need to look at the context. And I like to simplify the data. I like to simplify the information that I have in front of me. For example, if I have to choose between two midfielders, I usually try to simplify it. I choose two, three kind of information or piece of information that I like to follow. For example, shots in the box, shots in general, attempts, and maybe crosses, and kind of try to simplify it instead of, yeah, this person shoots from 40 yards, but then they don't cross at all, because you can get an assist instead of a goal at one point, especially with taking the price into consideration. Moving on to number 4 is you are the best resource. So when it comes down to it, this is your team. You can consume data, you can consume content, you can watch us and kind of recommend a player that we think he's going to do well at this point of time. But at the end, it's your team. And if you think something is correct, do not listen to anybody else.
Yeah, I think that not a lot of people give themselves enough credit. I mean, that's clear in FPL. We have how many people that just copy other people's teams or content creators' teams just so they can have a good rank and say to their buddies, hey, look, I beat you in the mini league. No, J Nix or Doctore beat you in the mini league. Not you specifically. I think also how you consume that information and how it makes sense to you. Because everybody can have, let's say, 10 points of data, and everybody will understand that data in a completely different manner. And to some extent, the end result doesn't change. And in other cases, everybody might be going for Salah, but you see something that says, hey, you know what? Nunez is the guy. I don't want Salah. I don't want a midfielder. I want to go for the forward that all of a sudden is making so much sense to me, and I feel like everybody else is just missing it. So if that's what you feel like, go for it. You'll hear a lot of people say don't use your gut, but you can use data to kind of steer your gut in a certain way, and your gut becomes your brain. Just remember, it's your team, and if it makes sense to you, it might just be the best idea anybody's never had.
I should add a couple of examples from my own personal experience last season I was at the end of the season I wanted to bring Madison in, but Zaha showed better data, and a lot of my friends, we all want to do well, kind of we're not in a competitive mode, and they were recommending Zaha over Madison just because he has slightly easier fixtures. And my gut was like Madison, 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 but I rejected this gut because everybody kind of was telling me, "Can you get Zaha? He's playing easier teams, blah blah blah." Madison blew Zaha out of the water, and it was like 30 40 points difference, which could have gotten me into the top 1k, the 3 digits. So sometimes your gut, I've been playing this game for long enough to kind of recognize patterns and see who might possibly could do well over the other person. But again, there were many cases that my gut was wrong. So again, you remember the ones that kind of hit you hard. So my gut was wrong, and let's say my friends steered me towards the right decision. But there were some instances as well that I kind of rejected my gut. So it stays in the memory. So I'm gonna try trusting even my gut even more from coming season. But I of course will consume and listen to people who actually dig into stats.
Hmm.
Moving on to number 5, it's one of my principles. It's fixtures, fixtures, fixtures. For me, fixtures make the form. Fixtures is king. They make the form. A lot of people say form is important, and I believe it is important, but it's not as important as fixtures. Let's say Bowen, if Bowen has scored a hat trick versus Brentford, let's say, and then Bowen has Man City, Liverpool, Man United, Chelsea, Arsenal in the next 5, I will not bring Bowen in because those fixtures will make the form kind of disappear. He might get a return, an assist, or a goal, but that doesn't mean he's gonna hold because you're looking for the more points. Basically, you're looking for the holes.
Yeah, I agree. I like using form as an indicator of who's hot currently, but then I also combine that with fixtures and additional data to figure out who's going to stay hot this game week and maybe upcoming game weeks, because like you mentioned, fixtures make the form, form doesn't make the fixtures. Man City is still Man City, and Fulham will still be Fulham unless they explode this year. Sorry, Fulham fans. If they explode, I'll eat my words. But that's the general reality of it. Like, if a player is hot, if they come up against a really tough team, they might start to fizzle out a little bit. So I completely agree, and this is, I know, the hottest debated topic in FPL. But form, yes, good. Fixtures, great though.
Moving on to the next point, number 6 is plan, plan, plan. For me, this is one of, if not the most important advice. I have a lot of mates who are playing FPL casually, and they just look at this game week's kind of fixtures. Oh, Haaland is playing Nottingham Forest, so they bring him in, not looking at the fixtures, not looking at the possible captaincy options. So always look at fixtures. Spend some time researching. Always look at fixtures, who's playing who you might possibly bring next week, for example. Because if you spend the money now, you will not be able to afford certain player next game week because they have better and easier fixtures. So planning is essential. I spend about an hour, 2 hours a day during the week just looking at fixtures, trying to see who I might want even 2 3 game weeks in advance in order kind of to prepare the funds for that player to come in. This constant kind of planning also will make you not panic at the end of the week before the game week starts. At the deadline, you just buy any player because it makes you in a certain autopilot system, kind of, okay, I know what I want to do, what I want to research.
Yeah, and I think planning is an extremely crucial part that is very difficult for casual managers or managers that are just breaking into FPL. But yeah, if you plan probably in like a 4 to 6 week window what you want to do, what transfers you might want to make, what subs and captains you might want to do. Like Doc had mentioned, it's kind of an autopilot feeling. Now, yes, there are situations where additional data can be brought to you, and it's like, hey, for the sake of it, let's say somebody gets injured that you planned on keeping through your 4 to 6 week window. That's going to change up your plan, but maybe you've already kind of thought about, okay, well, I would like to go for this guy if I can make it happen. Well, all of a sudden there's an opening in your midfield. You can pick up that guy. It's zero thought, Just do what you've instructed your team to do, you know. Bring in the guy that you need and you're good to go.
And moving on to the next point is question everything. Sometimes you see a lot on Twitter, like we had our guest last week, FPL Penguin, and he's not sold on Neto, for example. He's not sold on Perisic, and it's extremely valid point. But imagine saying I'm not going for Neto and Perisic on Twitter. You'll be you'll be slaughtered. And I don't agree kind of with Neto because he's kind of the best option at this price point, for example. But I agree with Perisic, especially if Perisic will he didn't play the last friendly or he was on the bench. And he has this history of a bit of injuries and substitutions and everything. So I had a lot of drafts without Perisic, for example. So question everything. Don't take everything at the face value.
Yeah, and I think this also kind of goes into the whole you're your best resource, really. Where you might find something that other managers aren't talking about or aren't finding, and you can spill the beans and be like, hey guys, notice this happening. Like, is this a good player to bring in? And maybe people have already thought about it, or maybe not. Or you could keep it secret, keep it to yourself, just leave them in your team, and when they explode and get 70 points in a game week, and then you also cap in them, so it's 140 points, you can just laugh at everybody else that didn't see what you were saying. But I think questioning everything, not taking everything at face value, and just because a content creator says, oh, I really like this guy and I'm bringing them in, doesn't mean that they're the best option. It just means that's the person that person was thinking of. So question everything 100%.
Absolutely agree. And we're coming on to the deadline of the first game week. So one of the recommendations that we have for you is do not bench your money. You do not need an expensive bench. You do not need an expensive fifth midfielder if you're going with 4.5 Andreas can do, because you can invest all your money into your starting lineup.
Yeah, just make sure your bench has 1 to 2 playing players. If you want a third, you can get one, but you don't want to have an 8 million bench player. That's money completely lost. You might as well just be playing down by like 5 million. So don't bench your money. Be smart about it. Put it in the starting lineup and just get guys that are going to get a couple minutes for you. It's a smart thing to do.
And moving on to number 9, analyze results. I believe, Joe, you have an example from game week 36?
Yeah, so my game week 36, I believe that was when KDB exploded, possibly, and that was when everybody had used their free hit, and I went the complete opposite direction. I used my free hit, but rather than KDB, I brought in Mahrez. And there were various other things that I did that were not the template. This is because I had sat down, I had looked through a bunch of stuff. I had watched the City Champions League game, I believe it was, where KDB, Mahrez, Foden, and somebody else came off like extremely early, like 50, 60 minutes, something like that, from the Champions League game. So I'm like, oh, Mahrez is like a natural born killer. Like, he can get me points. He came off early. They have a double. He's going to be the guy that I need to get. While everybody else is over here looking at KDB, I was like, Mahrez is my guy. So I brought him in. I brought in all these other players against what everybody else was doing, and I ended up only getting 70 points when I think the average was like 103 or something like that. It was a ridiculous game week. Fortunately enough, though, I didn't drop in rank a ton, and I was able to sit back and just analyze, okay, but like, what did I miss? Did I miss anything? Did I interpret data wrong? Which, a little bit, especially on the Mahrez aspect of things. I mean, I looked at a Champions League, him coming off early as, oh, they're reserving his minutes for the double game week in the Premier League, and that wasn't the case. It was just, hey, they were winning, they didn't need Mahrez in the game, or they needed to switch up of tactics, I forget what it was, and they just took him off. So it was much easier for me to sit there and kind of deal with the KDB going off and being like the third highest scoring asset in a game week for FPL of all time, and just being like, I did what I thought was right, everything lined up for me. Yeah, KDB exploded. Yeah, I didn't break 100 points, but it is what it is.
And this leading me to the next point, being it is what it is, which is basically take care of yourself, because it is what it is at the end of the day. It's just a game. We are very passionate about it. We're active on Twitter, we're active on YouTube, we have this channel, yes. And whenever we had previously bad game weeks, personally for me, especially like 5 to 10 years ago, it was affecting my mood throughout the week, and I usually go on a spiral of bad transfers. But experience again taught me just it's just a game. The game week is over. Restart, take a day off, take a week off, especially if it's like not double game week. Take a week off and then come back with a fresh mind. Listen to new content, consume, do other things, because mental health is more important than anything else when it comes to FPL and when it comes to life in general. So take care of yourself.
Yeah, and this might get me in trouble, but at the end of the day, it's just a stupid game that we like to play, that we like to compete with everyone.
Don't call it stupid. Don't call it stupid. It's a game. It might
See?
not be stupid.
See? But that's the thing. Like, it's just a game. I've had plenty of game weeks where I'm like so excited for the game week. I made all my transfers. I go in the very first game, my player gets like a red card or gets subbed off at halftime, and I'm like, all right, done watching games for the week. See you guys. And I look on Twitter, and everybody else's players are like doing great. I'm like, all right, well, turn off the phone for the week. All right, see you guys. And sometimes you just have to do that. But yes, at the end of the day, it's about taking care of yourself. As much as it makes sense that, hey, you want to put in 100% and win FPL, you can't win FPL if you're playing at 50%. You gotta be on your best game in order to compete with these top managers in the world.
Absolutely. So I hope everybody has enjoyed the episode. We hope to see you in higher ranks and taking care of yourself, of course. Joe, would you like to say goodbye to our audience?
Yeah, I'll see you next time, everyone. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment. We're looking to interact with everyone, and we always at least like the comments. We make sure that we read them, just so you guys know that we're listening, we're paying attention, and we hear you. So until next time, thank you, everyone.
All right, everybody. We'll see you on the next episode. Peace.
Peace all.